Talking Birds.
Made possible by the generous support of the Birdwatchers General Store, Orleans, Cape Cod. Birdwatchersgeneralstore.com.
By Vortex Optics with the VIP warranty, their unlimited lifetime promise to keep you and your optic covered. Learn more at vortexoptics.com.
And Beautyo Books, an independent family-owned bookstore carrying one of the largest selections of birding books in the world. BeautyOBooks.com.
Good morning. Welcome to our show number 860. We're starting off with an owl story again this week. On last week's show, we shared some good news about habitat protection for the northern spotted owl in the Northwest. One part of the story concerned the fact that in addition to habitat challenges and other things, that species population is also jeopardized by the increasing presence of this bird. The barred owl. We're mentioning this because for anyone who's seen a barred owl down in Mexico, you can add another species to your life list because the bird has been split into two species. The barred owl and the one in Mexico, the cinereous owl. Researchers from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the University of Colorado Boulder said the split was based primarily on differences in vocalizations. Well, the following item fits into two categories. One, our In Case You Missed It department, and two, our We Meant to Do This Story Last Week department. And we do have an update on the story. It's about a greater roadrunner, a bird that thrives in the harsh environment of our southwestern deserts, that took an unusual trip this month from Las Vegas, Nevada to Westbrook, Maine. Yes, in the middle of November. Sounds like a backward migration of some sort, except that roadrunners don't even migrate. So what happened? Well, this bird apparently hitched a ride in a van owned by a couple who were moving to a new home in the Northeast. They discovered the bird as they were unpacking, took it to a rehab facility. Folks there said the bird arrived in pretty good shape. And here's the update. The bird was returned to Las Vegas on Tuesday, where it was released in the same spot where it jumped into the Maine-bound van, and the roadrunner was seen sprinting away from its cage when it was released. There it goes. And on to our mystery bird contest with a preview of what's coming up. On our mystery bird contest a bit later on, our bird is a medium-sized raptor. Its broad, rounded wings have a dark brown and white checkered pattern above, with reddish-brown shoulders and rich orange barring below. The medium-length black tail shows narrow white bands, and it fans out when the bird is soaring. Our bird feeds mostly on small mammals, and lizards, snakes, and amphibians found in bottomland hardwood stands, deciduous swamps, and mixed deciduous conifer forests in the east, oak woodlands in the west. Many birds of this species migrate to southern states and Mexico in the winter. Those on the west coast, they tell us, don't generally migrate. Some clues there in the sound of our mystery bird and some wonderful prizes here, including the Droll Yankees' new generation metal finch sock. This is a beautiful feeder with a beautiful yellow top and base. It offers the attraction of a finch sock with the durability of metal. You can put this on a pole or you can hang it, either way you like. And our bonus prize, this is a beautiful thing too, a $15 gift certificate for Beautyo Books, home of the largest selection of birding books, one of the largest selections in the world. And if we get to our bonus question, we'll do a prize too from our friends at Wisdom Supply. They make all those wonderful things for school and office with no plastics and stuff. Really beautifully, environmentally friendly. On our bonus question, if we have time for that this morning. Meanwhile, we're big fans of electric vehicles around here, mostly because of their positive and essential contributions to a healthier planet. The newly passed $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan includes the creation of a network nationwide of electric vehicle charging stations. And here's a sign that electric vehicles are really coming into their own. Various states, including California, New York, and Michigan, are setting up efforts of their own, is one thing. And Motor Trend magazine, this past week, named the new Lucid Air pure electric vehicle its Car of the Year. Not Electric Car of the Year, Car of the Year. in competition with all other passenger vehicles. That's pretty cool. And here's something really cool. It's more of our Talking Birds ambassadors who are listener volunteers helping us get the word out about our show and about birds and conservation. And thank you to Cindy Marisick from Katona, New York. She's been listening to us for about a year, she says, catching up on older episodes. She says, I live in Somers, New York, excuse me, and I have 2.5 acres. And my garden is bird-friendly, so plenty of opportunity to listen, enjoy, and take photos, which I love to do. Thank you so much, Cindy. And thank you to Sean Cochran from El Cerrito, California. He says, I'm an ER nurse who discovered my love of birds during the early days of the pandemic. Birding has been a source of calm, hope, and inspiration during stressful times. Your podcast has enriched my birding experience, from learning new species to hearing important news in conservation to making me feel like a part of a community at a time of isolation. That is so nice. Thank you so much, Sean. So, Talking Birds listeners, we hope you'll become a part of our ambassadors family. Pretty easy to do. Just go to the Get Involved tab at the top of our homepage at talkingbirds.com. Still to come on our show today, speaking of California, that's where he is. We'll welcome superstar birder and bird ID guide author Richard Crossley and learn about his latest book. We'll also check in with Mike O'Connor, himself a highly regarded author, in a Let's Ask Mike live segment on his take about binoculars and such. Kind of a follow-up to last week's show. And up next, a bird that says its name and inspires songwriters is today's featured feathered friend. Presented by Birdwatching Magazine. For more than a quarter century, Birdwatching has been North America's premier magazine about wild birds and birding. Lots of folks have sung about today's featured feathered friend, the eastern whippoorwill. It got a mention by Elton John in his Philadelphia Freedom, by Fats Domino, and the Smashing Pumpkins in their renditions of My Blue Heaven. And who could forget Slim Whitman's Whip-poor-will Yodel?
The whippoorwill yodel, whippoorwill.
The eastern whippoorwill is a well-camouflaged, medium-sized nightjar with mottled brown, gray, and black plumage, a large, rounded head, long, slender, pointed wings, and a stout chest and a body that tapers to a long tail. Among its North American relatives in the Caprimulgidae family are the common poor-will, the common and lesser nighthawks, the common paroquet, and the chuck-will's widow. The eastern whippoorwill feeds by foraging for insects at dusk and dawn, and even through the night when the moon is bright. And the whippoorwill will lay its eggs in phase with the lunar cycle, so that the eggs hatch about 10 days before a full moon, when the adults can forage all night, sallying out from perches to scoop up insects in flight in their gaping mouths to provide food for their nestlings. Sadly, the eastern whippoorwill's population has suffered serious decline in many areas, due in large part to the loss of open understory forests through fire suppression and conversion to agriculture, cattle pastures, and suburban development. This bird, by the way, used to be known simply as the whippoorwill, until in 2011 it was split from its close relative, the Mexican whippoorwill, as a result of DNA testing. Although the eastern whippoorwill is not a songbird, its call serves as a song, as it repeats this famous phrase for hours on end during the breeding season. The eastern whippoorwill, Caprimulgus vociferus, today's Talkin' Birds featured feathered friend.
Whippoorwill.
Welcome again to our show number 860, and thanks for being with us. Richard Crossley is an internationally acclaimed birder and photographer and author of the award-winning Crossley ID Guide series, and he's joining us here this morning to talk about those books and his newest one. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Ray.
Wonderful to have you with us. Thanks for being up early in California this morning. So, Richard, your unique ID guide style is really pretty amazing to see, and quite enlightening to anyone who hasn't seen a guide like this. So you have not one or two pictures of a particular bird species, but a dozen or more. Tell us about that.
Well, I think if you're going to practice at anything, you want to make it as lifelike as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'm actually looking outside of my window now, and I see everything in focus from near to far. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to replicate what I see. And of course, practice makes perfect, right? So the more images you put in there, the more you can practice. So my books are basically a halfway house between the old school field guides with a side-on white backgrounds and what reality is. So that's, they're very, very difficult to make, and that's the big problem. Nobody else is crazy enough to put in the time, the money, and everything else that it takes to do these. So unfortunately, they were the first, and I was hoping every book would be the same way, because it is the right way, but I have a feeling it'll be the last as well,
Well, I don't know if anybody wants to take 10,000 pictures as you did. You took almost all of the pictures in this newest Western guide, and about 10,000 of them, right?
Yeah, well, it wasn't 10,000, Ray. I wish it was. It was closer to 1 million I actually took. I chose nearly 11,000 out of them, yes. I take all the images myself.
Wow.
And so I really, like any other artist, I have a mental image of how this bird lives, how everything's connected, its personality, if you like. And so birds for me are a bit like people. They're a size and a shape, and we behave certain ways. Much less emphasis on colour. And so, I go out and try and take these images that capture the essence of the bird, and then I paint in pixels.
Painting in pixels. So you have different lighting, different backgrounds, different poses. So as you say, you really get an idea of what any particular bird really looks like. So your new book, The Crossley ID Guide Western Birds, covers, if I have this right, Colorado and New Mexico up to Montana, Canada, and Alaska. Yeah. And you describe it, too, as a workbook style book. How does that work, doing your homework?
Well, being from England, oh my goodness, we were shot if we took a book out into the field. You're only allowed to take a field guide a notebook, and really look at what the real thing is. Mm-hmm. No book is like real life, even mine, So you practice in the field with a notebook, but you have to practice at home. So you get yourself a glass of wine, a pint of beer, or whatever it is, get in front of the fire, and you do your homework. And so you're prepared when you go out the next day. You can leave it in the car, do the same thing, but it's too big to carry out in the field, and that's not by accident.
Yes.
And then you can do more homework when you get home.
All right. Yes. You'd have to have some large pockets for this ID guide, for sure. So a glass of wine or a pint of beer, and in front of the fireplace, and practice up and get ready that way. I got it. It sounds pretty good to me. You say this book, Richard, is for beginning and intermediate birders, right?
Yeah, so that may sound interesting, because my books have way more information, and certainly visual information, than any other book by a long way. Mm-hmm. But what we learn is that really these partial pictures that are most field guides are really bad news. So the experts like that, because they can fill in all the holes, the habitats, the behavior, they know them. But for a beginner, intermediate birders, they don't. So it's the opposite of what most people think. Birding is remarkably difficult. So when we give this sort of incomplete partial picture showing side on and just some patterns of colours, it's really giving beginners and even intermediate birders really no hope of being successful. Expert birders use these other clues, habitat, behaviour, and see how everything is connected. Books don't show that, and it's my dream that will change, not just for bird books, but how we educate kids particularly, but people, that we show the complete picture, not this partial, confusing picture.
You have quite an elaborate introduction in your book about how to bird, and maybe that's the most important part of your book. I think you've said that, in fact. Give us some idea about what's included there, if you would.
Well, just everything, so I'd looked at all the other books. No other book until mine had actually talked about how to be a bird like the very best birders. So my book tells about the complete picture. So if you want to be a birder like me and hopefully know what you're looking at, however near or far, this is what you need to do. It's based on how the rest of the world, particularly Europeans, bird. The birders in Europe are far better than over here. I know people don't want to hear that. But they look at birds like we do at people: size, shape, behavior, patterns of color, and how they're all connected to how and where birds live. And that complete picture is really important, so we talk about how to do that.
By the way, just to mention other ID guides that Richard has created include eastern birds, waterfowl, raptors, Britain and Ireland, and he's co-author of the Shorebird Guide. And you're also the co-author of another book, Richard, Ornithotherapy, with Holly Merker and your daughter, Sophie Crossley. And Holly was on the show with us a few weeks ago talking about that remarkable book. And on your website, we see these words to describe your love of birding and the outdoors: crazy, wildly passionate, driven, and single-minded. And yet you're very tuned into the idea of how making a real connection with nature and how that can provide us with a healthier and more fulfilling life is possible. And as you say in your author's notes, this is ornithotherapy and we all need it.
Absolutely we do. And so the ornithotherapy guide on the surface looks very different to the ID guides, but it's really exactly the same. So the whole goal is just helping people connect to nature better. Forget all the lists and charging around that stuff. It's really, birding begins for me out of your window. As I'm looking here, actually the house I live in now was chosen because of the windows. And it's great for birding right outside the window. And so learning to really be a voyeur of nature is really important. It's that connection to the bird's personality, how and where they live, that for me is the most important thing. Not colours and lists, So there's a lot of emphasis on that. But for me, it's learning the bird's personality. You don't need to know its name. Learn how it lives, where it lives, what time it comes into your garden, its behaviours. The name comes later. So to me, it's like, think of birds almost like people. And that's how I see them. And, I'm just really blessed because I got birding when I was 7 years old. I actually grew up on a farm, and I feel so lucky to have been brought up in the right school of birding, and just my appreciation of nature in general, I feel is really good. But I'm not a lister. I don't have any lists at all.
Well, so, this will require names, but what are you seeing outside your window right now?
There's a lot of Oregon juncos, and we've had a few pine siskins, mountain chickadee. It's a little quiet, to be honest, because often it's mayhem out here. We get Anna's hummingbirds still coming in, even though I'm up in the mountains. So to me, I think it's fun working out how many are here, which is confusing sometimes, but how these little Anna's hummingbirds, the water's all frozen in my pond, but these Anna's hummingbirds, they can hack it. They can deal with frozen weather. So that's just remarkable to me.
Richard Crossley's latest book is his Crossley ID Guide, Western Birds. You can find signed copies of the book and many others, and lots of other information about birds and Richard's work. Not just find those, but get those, buy those books at CrossleyBooks.com. Crossley with 2 S's and EY at the end, CrossleyBooks.com. Richard, we'll be following you, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks, my pleasure, Ray, and all the best to all your listeners, mate.
All right, thanks again, Richard Crossley. Coming up next, it's our Mystery Bird contest in just 1 minute. The flutter of a tail feather, the flash of a wing bar in mid-flight. You don't always have a lot of time to identify a bird in nature, let alone to appreciate its beauty. But with Vortex Optics, you'll have the power to bring every wild moment closer. When you choose Vortex, you're choosing to have a partner in the field as passionate about nature as you are. Whether you're spotting old friends on the backyard feeder or packing for a once-in-a-lifetime trip to add a few species to your life list, Vortex offers a full range of optics and optics accessories for every birder and every budget. And whether the birds are taking you to another state or another country, you're always covered by the Vortex VIP warranty, an unlimited lifetime promise to keep you and your optic covered. If you'd like to learn more, or if you need help choosing your next optic, give Vortex a call at 1-800-4VORTEX or visit vortexoptics.com. That would be about enough. Thank you. That's our mystery bird. Yeah. Wow. Before we get into the contest here, a great holiday special we want to tell you about from our friends at Birds and Beans. Here it is. For $120, you'll get 12-ounce bags of Birds and Beans coffee. Ground and ready to brew, or whole bean if you prefer. That's a savings of more than 25% on triple certified shade-grown, Smithsonian bird-friendly, USDA organic, fair trade, and great tasting Birds and Beans coffee. We love it around here, and you will too. Order the 12 by 12 holiday special today at birdsandbeans.com. That's birdsandbeans.com. It's our Mystery Bird Contest. You just heard the bird, beautiful prizes from Droll Yankees and Beauty-O Books and maybe Wisdom Supply if we get to that bonus question with enough time. It's a medium-sized raptor, broad rounded wings that have a dark brown and white checkered pattern above, reddish-brown shoulders, and rich orange barring below the medium-length black tail. Has white bands, narrow white bands, and it fans out when the bird is soaring. Some of the clues there on our mystery bird this morning. So let's see who may have an answer to what that bird is. We have Let's Ask Mike. We have Let's Ask Mike coming up next. Before we do that, is that right? Yes. Isn't it funny how I forgot that? Boy, Mike is going to be upset because he's on live today, so he's going to really take it out on me. Anyway, as I was saying, we'll do that, but it's Let's Ask Mike Live in just 1 minute. Beauty-O Books carries one of the largest selections of birding books in the world. New, used, and rare books covering everything from backyard birding to general ornithology, from field guides to photography skills, biography, fiction, and humor. You'll find it all, along with the knowledgeable customer service you've been looking for in one convenient place. BeautyOBooks.com. B-U-T-E-O. BeautyOBooks.com.
My name is Robert Stephenson. I am calling from Clarkston, Washington. One of the things I like about being a Talking Birds ambassador is the conversation that it generates with other birders. I would encourage others to become Talking Birds ambassadors. It's very easy to do, and you'll have your cards and be Talking Birds right away.
Talkin' Birds listeners, we hope you'll join our ambassadors family at talkinbirds.com.
Well, there's that music for Mike O'Connor down there, my good friend Mike O'Connor down there at the Birdwatchers General Store on Cape Cod. Mike, I don't want to say that I forgot you this morning, but I guess I did, but I'm sorry about that.
Little too much partying last night, Ray, was it?
There's just some wild birding, that's all, up there in the North Shore of Massachusetts yesterday. That's what it was. That's all it takes to throw me off, apparently. But Mike, last week we talked with our optics expert, Adrian Lisak from Vortex Optics, about binoculars and scopes, and I know you sell those things in your store, so you have some insight about binoculars and scopes and what folks should buy and stuff like that, right?
Well, we're right. Adrian's right, and he represents a good company. That's a really wonderful company. But for some reason, there are binoculars that people, I think you even said it, like you see in the backs of magazines, that people still want to buy. And I get this question a lot. The people want these so-called zoom binoculars, because spotting scopes, you put them on a tripod and they zoom into the target and you get high magnification. So people think, okay, let's get that in binoculars, because I don't want to carry around a tripod. I don't want to spend that money. The trouble is, zoom binoculars are just so much that they're just totally inferior to regular binoculars. They're kind of a gimmick. They're kind of like those like those things like you see in the back of the magazines. And they also, because magnification is something which has a limit of being able to hold in our hands. Most people can hold about an 8 magnification, and then after that it becomes difficult to hold it steady. So if you zoom in the image with these gimmicky zoom binoculars, the image becomes larger, which is nice, but also becomes dark, grainy, and because of the shaking in our hands, and we all shake, even when you're sober, Ray, you'll shake a little bit. So because of our breathing, and the image becomes jittery and not very clear. So he was right. Get something, a fixed focus, probably about an 8 power, 8x42. You can go for a compact if you're doing a lot of hiking, maybe an 8x25. And the 25 or the 42 refers to the objective lens, the big lens at the front, and so you can get something smaller, which is fine. But stay away from those gimmicky kind. They make these things called focus-free binoculars where there was no focus wheel at all. Please avoid those because they don't give you ability to make a crisp image. There's just a generic. Everything is kind of, sort of in focus, but it'd be like borrowing somebody else's eyeglasses. You need to make that adjustment. So kind of avoid those because they're no good value. Turning a focusing wheel isn't very hard.
Not that hard.
So
no.
If you can't turn the focus wheel, then maybe you can't. Shouldn't go for a bird walk because that takes too much energy. And the last thing is, and he mentioned, and everybody says this: get the most expensive binoculars you can afford. I'm not 100% sold on that idea. If you are just, and I think a lot of your listeners are kind of just backyard people, and they don't really leave the backyard. They just want to see the cardinals and the chickadees. Then get something a little less expensive, and that's perhaps all you need. But if you do graduate and become one of these hardcore, Richard Crossley people where you go out in the field all the time, then you can upgrade your binoculars, but you have the less expensive pair to share with a friend or to keep in the house when you're going around. So that's all I gotta say.
That's
Stay
a
away
lot.
from the zoom binoculars, and if you're out birding and you see someone birding, ask to borrow this just to see if you like them.
Okay, you said a lot. I'm going to listen back to it later.
And write my name down so you remember who I am.
I will. Yeah, it's Mike O'Connor. Got it. And maybe I'll talk to you next week, Mike.
Okay.
All right,
See you guys.
Mike O'Connor, down there at the Birdwatchers General Store. Back to the Mystery Bird Contest right after this.
Every Wednesday, Birdwatching Magazine sends an e-newsletter full of information of interest to birdwatchers, including recent news stories about birds, conservation, and science, photography tips, stories about places to go birding, bird ID tips, and much more. Best of all, the newsletter is free. Sign up today at birdwatchingdaily.com/newsletter.
We're going to play this again, but softer this time because this is early for playing this sound here. But that's our mystery bird. 781-837-4900 is the number to call to tell us what that bird is or take your guess. A drawing always determines our winner if we don't get a correct answer. 781-837-4900. And we have Bridget in San Antonio, Texas. Good morning, Bridget.
Good morning, Ray. How are you? Good.
I'm fine. What a beautiful place it is. I love San Antonio. San Antonio.
Me too.
Oh, yeah, it's a nice place. Bridget, our mystery bird, you heard all that stuff. What do you say?
My guess is red-shouldered hawk.
You are absolutely right. Red-shouldered hawk. Beautiful job. We are so close to being out of time. Bridget, thank you so much for calling. And congratulations. Yeah, stay on the line there, and Jesse will get your info, and we'll say thanks for listening to everybody else. And next week, the return of our resident reviewer, noted children's books author Susan Edwards Richmond, will give us her take on a new, big new book called The Complete Birds of the World, Every Species Illustrated, next week. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
Ray Brown's Talkin' Birds.
Made possible by the generous support of the Birdwatchers General Store, Orleans, Cape Cod. Birdwatchersgeneralstore.com.
By Vortex Optics with the VIP warranty. Their unlimited lifetime promise to keep you and your optic covered. Learn more at vortexoptics.com.
And Beautyo Books, an independent family-owned bookstore carrying one of the largest selections of birding books in the world. Beautyobooks.com.